Is your sailboat equipped with everything you need to keep yourself, your crew, and your passengers as safe as humanly possible? Spend a little time with me and compare whether your safety equipment measures up or exceeds what's presented in this video. Hi, I'm Sailor Eric. Today we are going to do a safety equipment inventory of an offshore cruiser. This is Silverheel's Myerchin 424 Catch. I have developed a custom 20-item checklist that we will go over today. But first, I just want to say thank you to my current subscribers. You have joined my personal sailing journey, which will continue to be filled with learning, boat maintenance, travel, seamanship, and sailing adventures. Sailors are students of the world, and it is a privilege to be part of your community. All right, here's a glimpse of the checklist, and the first thing we're going to go over is PFD inventories. We're going to check how many PFDs we have and if they're serviceable. For myself, I have a personal Onyx Impulse A/M 33 Type 5 Coast Guard approved inflatable offshore PFD with an integrated harness. This provides 22.5 pounds of buoyancy when it's inflated. The CO2 cartridge is automatically activated when it hits the water, but there is also a pull tab to activate it. Additionally, there is a blow tube to manually inflate the vest. For guests, there are 7 Type 3 vest-style personal flotation devices and 1 Type 2 horseshoe-style PFD on board Silverheels in the starboard cockpit locker. These are rated to provide 15.5 pounds of buoyancy. As our bodies are considered 95% buoyant in water, this amount of buoyancy serves most adults. I keep an additional 3 Type 3 vest style and 1 Type 2 horseshoe style and 4 children's vests at home in case of extra guests. Item number 2 is fire extinguisher inspection. Let's take a look. There are 3 10B designated fire extinguishers on Silverheels, which complies with the Coast Guard safety regulations relative to a 42-foot sailboat. 1 4-pound capacity extinguisher is located at the foot of the main companionway next to the navigation desk. The remaining 2 extinguishers are 2.5-pound capacity, the first located at the foot of the forward companionway, and the second located in the forward V-berth compartment. All are located on the starboard side. All show dials in the green that would pass a Coast Guard inspection. We just want to make sure that we check those periodically, right? So fire extinguishers, check. Item number 3 is signaling devices. I keep my signaling devices near the nav station. The Coast Guard requires recreational vessels to maintain visual and audible signal devices aboard. For years, I have preferred maintaining signal flares kept near my navigation desk on the starboard side, which are effective and visible day or night. I think flares would especially be superior to signal flags or electronic light beacons when trying to garner the attention of a passing freighter on the ocean in a distress situation. All right, so here are the flares. And I looked in at the markings, and you can see on this one here, expired November 2022. So I am out of date on these. The downside is the expiration of these devices and how to properly dispose of them in a safe and conscientious manner when they are well beyond their expiration dates. The U.S. Coast Guard treats devices beyond 42 months of manufacture to be expired. This year, to comply with the USCG regulations, I'm adding 2 orange signal flags and an electronic signal beacon to my visual distress signal inventory. I plan to keep the expired pyrotechnics aboard, but would add a new kit prior to a significant offshore voyage. For sound-producing devices, I maintain an air horn, a whistle, and a bell on board Silverheels. So there are minimum levels of safety equipment you are expected to have on a vessel. The Coast Guard can inspect you to check that, and to have signaling items that are not expired is part of the checklist. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is boat cushions and the life sling.
Boat cushions are considered Type 4 personal flotation devices by the U.S. Coast Guard. I currently maintain 5 of these in my port cockpit locker, in addition to flat fenders, which can double as boat cushions. These provide comfort in the cockpit and serve as ready survival gear in the event of someone falling overboard. In such a case, the crew is briefed to throw all of those cushions overboard immediately so the person in the water has some flotation resources that they can swim to. The life sling is an effective tool to recover someone in the water and is considered standard safety equipment on most recreational sailing vessels. The sling is attached securely to the vessel on load-bearing hardware with a bowline knot. In my case, it's tied to the davit mount. The case houses a flotation device, which is connected by polypropylene line. This line is designed to float on top of the water. The flotation device would be pulled out of the case and thrown clear of the vessel to avoid the line fouling in the propeller if the engine is on.
So the idea behind that life sling is you throw it out behind the vessel, it deploys, and then you maneuver the vessel around that person who is in the water, and that allows them to make it to the line, and then they can pull that flotation device to them, or they can just pull themselves directly to the vessel. And then ultimately we deploy the swim ladder for that person to climb up.
The next thing is simple but easy to take for granted. Having quality and sharp knives aboard to cut a line is very important. There are many lines aboard and any can get fouled. Having the ability to cut a line in a pinch can be a life-saving action. I always have at least 2 knives aboard, one of which with a serrated edge and both with Marlin spikes to help work through tight knots.
There are times when a knife is just not enough to expediently cut a wire or fastener. In this event, bolt cutters or a battery-powered grinder with a cutting wheel seems to be the right tool. I currently have a healthy set of bolt cutters, but plan to upgrade to a cordless grinder soon, as that tool is easier to store and is effective for a larger set of issues. All right, the next thing I want to show you is my EPIRB. This is registered with the Coast Guard. I register it every couple of years. I get these reminders that indicate, okay, it's time to register. So EPIRB is currently active.
This emergency position indicating radio beacon requires manually flipping a switch to activate. Modern versions are water activated. Once activated, satellites pick up the signal, cross-reference it with the registration, and pass the information to the most appropriate first responder organization.
All right, the next 2 items I want to talk about is the radar reflector and the radios and the emergency antenna. Let's dig into that. Here's my radar reflector, and I'll tell you, that thing I've had up there on the spreader, and that thing bangs around like a son of a bitch. I haven't figured out how to keep that thing hoisted in a way that it doesn't bang around. So that radar reflector is old school. There are newer radar reflectors that are much more sleek and effective, and I think I want to get something like that because I don't think it's very expensive to upgrade to a better radar reflector. The other thing is the radio and emergency antenna.
In regards to safety, the VHF radio is a primary means of communication on an offshore sailboat. AIS is integrated into my VHF radio. AIS, Automatic Identification System, is more or less a transponder system for boats. Boats registered can be tracked on websites such as marinetraffic.com or vesselfinder.com. Other vessels equipped with AIS will have your location, and alarms will go off on their system when they get within a defined proximity of your vessel, as will yours. Now let's talk about VHF radio redundancy. An emergency antenna is useful when you question the effectiveness of your own antenna. I've personally been out in the dead of night with no wind and no engine, and a commercial vessel was bearing down on me, not responding to VHF hails. It was only when I shined a high beam flashlight on my sail that the vessel responded, realizing my presence and changing course. It turned out my normal antenna was disconnected at the mast base. Hooking up the emergency antenna would have been an effective way to deal with the problem had I been carrying it. Leveraging a portable handheld VHF radio might also have been effective in this described scenario. I had one aboard at the time of the previous incident and failed to leverage it in this situation. The more options you give yourself, the more likely one of them will come to mind.
There's two more items I'd like to talk about in the checklist. One is this carbon monoxide detector.
A carbon monoxide detector is another item that is easy to overlook, but the lack of it can kill someone when cruising and sleeping below. Just as your home should have a fire detector, a sailboat should have a carbon monoxide detector.
The other item is a satellite communication device. This is called a Zoleo.
The Zoleo facilitates SMS text messaging and email to predetermined contacts through a Bluetooth-connected cell phone application. The device requires a modest subscription fee. In today's modern world, maintaining satellite internet, phone, or messaging devices on an offshore cruiser seems like cheap insurance against the possibility of being distressed in a hard-to-reach area.
Okay, next item I want to talk about is flashlights and batteries. I have 3 of these flashlights. I have one very high beam. This is an underwater flashlight, so it's got like 4 C batteries in there, and it is very bright. So again, 3 of these. I've got 3 red light flashlights like that. These are super inexpensive, but they're just high beam. They light up everything. The red lights are great. One other thing I want to mention is batteries. I always keep a healthy set of batteries, replacement batteries aboard. That is just like inexpensive insurance, right? You got to have all the batteries you could possibly need available, nice and fresh. In addition to flashlights, right? Flashlights are great for night. Another thing is chem lights.
Chem lights can be used at night to display the appropriate visual signals for other marine traffic to heed, such as signaling your vessel is aground or not under command, which would require 2 red lights hanging vertically.
If the boat gets a hole and you have to plug the hole, so to have a set of these bungs is handy to plug that hole where the through hole would be. Another item that I have aboard is toilet wax, which is a good immediate sealant that you can apply over something to like seal the seams. Having some epoxy and other types of sealants, heavy duty sealants, especially ones that you can apply while wet, is very useful. Other items that you could potentially use to plug holes, certainly blankets, pillows, things like that might be used in a pinch. I certainly have actual fiberglass aboard if needed. All right, let's talk documents. You got to have documents on your vessel, right? So the first thing is you got to have a copy of the United States Coast Guard Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook, right? This is required to be on any recreational vessel or sailboat. I've got my certificate of documentation. This has to be updated every so often. It's periodic updates. I do have that available here on my vessel. That's something I recently updated. Same thing with the registration for Illinois. You got to have that. One last piece of documentation I should talk about is insurance. You should have your insurance phone numbers any place if you're going on a extended trip. Let's talk medical supplies. You got to have a medical kit aboard. Here's what mine looks like. Kind of a professionally put together kit here. In addition, I've got Band-Aids. I've got Bonine for seasickness. I've got some medical tape. I've got, looks like a scopamine patch handy on board. I've got a couple of ACE bandages, some ibuprofen, I think, Neosporin, things like that. So all the basics. The more extended of a cruise I plan, the more significant this kit is going to be. A captain is also doubles often as the doctor, the on-scene doctor. It is important to have a decent med kit available to address not only yourself, but what others might run into. Okay, now we're going to talk about go bags on a vessel. If you have to abandon ship, you have to leave the ship for some reason, whether there's a fire, or you're sinking and you have to go, then a go bag is what you need. This is a smaller go bag, which I'll maintain somewhere close to the cockpit or in the cockpit at all times. Something I can quickly grab if necessary. And it's got the basics that in a pinch, here are some of the things that you really need to survive. The EPIRB is going to be in here. The solar panel battery, solar panel rechargeable battery, so I can recharge maybe my communicator. It's going to be in here. The communicator is I'm going to pull out here shortly. The rigger's knife, insect repellent, sunscreen, sunglasses, a hat. I don't have a hat in there at the moment. Scopamine patch, flashlight, charging cable, extra batteries for the flashlight, a small pair of scissors with blunted edges, a Zoleo communicator, which I discussed earlier. The idea is have something available so that in the pinch you can just grab it. It's compact and it has the essentials of what you need. In addition, you would probably be well served to have a larger, more significant survival kit that you would take on a life raft with you if you're out in the ocean, right? Something that is much more significant. If you read the book Adrift, where somebody was out there for, I think, 68 days and had to survive. So you're going to want stuff like a solar still in that bag, right? So you can create fresh water out of seawater. I have a spear gun for fish catching, right? So to have a spear gun, insect repellent is going to be handy. Sunscreen is going to be handy as well. I have maybe some mosquito nets, a survival kit that's prepackaged with a bunch of survival gear in there. A signal mirror is going to be included in that, a whistle, extra cordage is going to be in there. A thermal blanket, right? It could be very handy. We'd all be surprised if caught in a survival situation how useful one extra t-shirt could be, right, in that situation. A toothbrush is something that should be in probably the larger one, maybe even the smaller one, you could argue. All right. One thing I want to get to is deploying the emergency tiller. We want to test that out. I haven't tested that in a while, and it's time to test it. So we are going to see how the emergency tiller works. We're going to pry up this plate. I used to have a metal plate on here, and that deck plate basically corroded. We were unable to get it off that deck. Now we have a plastic one. I'm going to pull my knife out. And we're going to basically flip that off. And now in here, that is the stock that we're going to put the emergency tiller post on. So we'll do that real quick. So I keep the emergency tiller in this starboard side lazarette. All right. I should be able to turn this. Oh, I gotta unlock the steering wheel. See, this is turning the rudder. So this is the emergency tiller in action. You can see we installed this ring onto the end of that tiller. That allows us to lash that down properly, nice and tight. Just the prop wash from running engine makes it very difficult to steer and hold it in place. So lashing it down with that eye bolt or that eye ring would be very handy in this case. But this is a check on the emergency tiller system. All right, the one thing I'm not going to be able to demonstrate today, but was on my list, is the pumps. I would need to put water into the bilge and then demonstrate pumping it out. And I did this throughout the season. I know the pumps work, both the hand pumps and the pump. I just replaced a pump, actually, electronic pump, in the bilge. So those are fresh. Knowing that your pumps work, both the hand pump and the automatic pump system with the float switch, understanding that those work and are pumping out water out of your bilge is extremely important, right? So definitely check that. That should be on anybody's safety equipment inspection. Okay, let's briefly talk about the life raft. Here's my life raft. I inherited this when I bought the boat, so when I got it 5 years ago, it was already out of date. This life raft will be replaced with a newer one. That's a $5,000 to $10,000 expense, so I'm not in a rush to replace that until I'm really ready to take out
this vessel onto the ocean.
I just want to cover one bonus item here. I have a Drogue on board for heavy weather sailing in case I get caught by a storm and I want to surf the waves and it's so significant that I want to slow the boat down. I can deploy something in the water and drag it, and that is known as a Drogue. Okay, so this is the Drogue that I have.
This Drogue is 2 meters or 6 foot in diameter and is rated for use with my sized sailboat. It can also be used as a sea anchor if deployed from the bow. I purchased this item from Amazon.com to provide options when sailing in heavy weather. Anchors are essential pieces of safety gear, which should not be overlooked. My primary anchor is a 45-pound CQR plow-type anchor with a swiveling head on 120 feet of anchor chain and another 50 feet of line. I additionally have a light Danforth anchor mounted on the stern and a secondary 45-pound claw or Bruce-type anchor located below decks, which would be supported by 50 feet of chain and 100 feet of line. Inspecting the chain and shackles at least once a season is worthwhile. Additionally, I have a 250-foot spool of 5/8-inch nylon line to be used for the sea anchor or Drogue to increase the scope of anchor rode available to allow for tying to shore or to act as a backup anchor rode.
And one other bonus item I want to talk about is this Plastimo safety ladder. So this is a ladder that you can hang on your vessel, and it'll actually hang down to a level that you could pull and deploy. So if you are outside your boat and the swim ladder's not down and you have no way to get up on your boat, you're kind of screwed, right? So this, if you hang on your vessel underway, at least is something that you could pull down and deploy it so that you could then climb back onto your vessel. So this is a handy little safety ladder that I recommend that everybody has aboard. You just have to remember to actually put it out there when you are short-handed or single-handed and you're out there. It is potentially something that you might need in a pinch.
I think I've covered everything in this inventory checklist, and then some. You can find links to some of this equipment in the description below. Special thanks to my subscribers. Thank you for your support.